Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan, and joining me as always is Austin the Day Ghost. It's time for another request, and today's request comes from Bill Mills on Patreon, and he asked us to talk about a book that I haven't read in, of course, a good long time. This is Batman Zero Year, which starts in 2013, goes into 14, and is the origin for the New 52 Batman, which is funny, Austin, because when New 52 started, I didn't expect that we'd get a new Batman origin, since Batman was one of the couple of things that was trapped in a bubble famously, and all of his history, we were told, it had ostensibly happened within the last 5 years. And then it gets awkward with all the things that you can't decide through that if it had happened or not, which it continued to be a problem all the way through Rebirth when we get into Tom King, and it's like, with everything he was doing with Bane, and you're constantly asking yourself questions like, did Nightfall happen? And things like that. And I haven't been reading...
It's a direct sequel to this, and it's weird because the world is very different. Because like every villain exists now.
Yeah, exactly. It's really odd. My big takeaway reading this again, and I remember liking this a lot when it came out. Austin, I know this is your favorite part of this run.
Yeah, which isn't saying a ton because I've only read 3 arcs. I've only read Court of the Owls, Death of the Family, and this. So,
but most people, and those are probably the most famous, the most well read of, if people were cherry picking and they were just reading these in trade volumes, because people did jump around some with Snyder, but like Endgame I guess is in there too, but like those are the big three that people were reading then and remember now, I would say. And like of those three, I think a lot of people would put Zero Year probably in the middle or at the end. I mean, most people, Court of the Owls was insanely popular, it was huge, and most people would probably still put that above this, just for nostalgia or concept of the Court of the Owls, the kind of haunting imagery and atmosphere and all of that. I think that story really falls off by the third act, but...
Yeah, absolutely. The best thing about that book is the that maze scene that's killer.
Yeah.
And then outside of that, like, I don't remember a ton.
Yeah, everybody remembers that.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. And, of course, Court of the Owls is constantly influencing extra media Batman stuff even still. We just got Court of the Owl stuff in the short-lived, 6 people watched it Gotham Knight show.
And
I only watched...
6 people played Gotham Knight's game.
Is Court of the Owls in that, too?
Yeah, they're the main villains.
Of course they are. This... I kept kind of expecting to influence more extra media stuff, and it hadn't really until somewhat recently, and I didn't even really pick up on it until reading it again here, but there is a surprising amount of the Batman in this going back retroactively. Like, when you get to the end of the Batman, all I can think about is No Man's Land, because we're kind of... and we kind of end it with basically that status quo, with electricity's out and the bridges are broken down and people are kind of stuck, in the city, and it's basically a no man's land, and you're setting up for gang wars and all of that. But I had completely, and I felt like an idiot reading this again, because it's the Riddler and there's a giant flood, and I'm like, oh. Yeah, they did kind of get that from this. And there's some thematic stuff that we can talk about that perhaps influenced that movie a little bit as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it sounds like you had what I did with the lens thing, where the lens thing comes from Court of the Owls, but it's portrayed so differently that I didn't think about that book.
The lens thing.
The movie.
I don't know what we're talking
about. He wears lenses that record everything he sees.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's portrayed so differently in that movie that I wasn't even thinking of Court of the Owls.
Yeah, that's true, which is a testament to that movie. That, even those of us, Batman fans that are familiar with this stuff aren't necessarily always picking up on the influences and the inspirations. Because that means that, it's subtly integrated, and it isn't just... it's fine to just straight up adapt, but it's cool when so many different things are blended together to make a thing like that. And one of the big things you and I really praised it for when it came out was that it was such a kind of quilt of everything Batman. And so, like, I'm still finding stuff. Which is appropriate, because that is a long film.
Yeah. And it'll only get longer. The next one will be 4 hours.
I bet so. After a while, they're going to be like, screw it. We really are just going to put it on HBO Max's, or I guess Max now.
Well, it'll be like Avatar 3, where Cameron said that Avatar 3 has a 9-hour cut that he won't cut down until it's all finished. So,
wow, that's crazy.
It'll be like that. It'll be a 9-hour The Batman movie.
I want to say there's no way that would be as dense, but that's not fair, because I didn't even bother with the second one, so...
Yeah. But anyways, Zero Year.
Yeah, so Zero Year is 12 issues, and there is, of course, this is a huge event, because that's all we did with Snyder Batman stuff, even things that were not intended to be... Really, none of it was, honestly, a big, like intercompany crossover things. You had to have a lot of the other regular books tied into this so that they could sell extra copies, and I've never read really any of that other stuff. I have the same thing with this that I did with, I want to say Death of the Family also did that. There was that,
Yes, it did.
There was that like a single night thing or whatever that was called, where like a bunch of things happened in one evening, and they went through a bunch of different books. Do you remember that?
That was Night of the Owls.
Oh, that's what it was? Night of the Owls, yeah. But Death of the Family probably also had some tie-ins.
No, Death of the Family does, because I think they released all of the tie-in stuff as Joker Death of the Family.
Okay. Oh, I remember that, because I had that famous Batgirl cover.
Yeah.
Which was a great issue, that the Gail Simone run.
When I read, I was reading New 52 Suicide Squad, and that ties into Death of the Family.
Oh, wow.
Because Harley's in it.
That's crazy. So I guess... in going back and doing flashbacks, all of those issues with Zero Year would be like the first time Batman meets a bunch of different characters.
I don't know, because I know they do a Green Arrow one, and I think that's Green Arrow on the island. Like I want.
Oh, strange.
I want to say it's like the Year One thing where we just all tie it in with that name.
Okay. Well, maybe they're not all the same. Maybe Batman's not in them all. But I thought I'd read somewhere that a lot of them were like, and then Batman meets this person, and yeah, I don't know.
That could be, because I assumed it was just here's everyone's origin, but we're gonna use that branding. But I don't know.
Yeah. Somebody in the comments before we started said that people were mad when this book came out, that it was taking Year One out of continuity, or that it wasn't doing something more like Year One. I honestly, respectfully, don't remember there being a lot of vitriol against this book. I don't remember people complaining about that, really. I mean, it was a big deal. I mean, I remembered it was popular. I remember the big thing that was... that people were reading this for. I mean, I didn't even really remember people talking too much about like how big of a deal doing Batman Origin again was, except the kind of striking image at the beginning of the first issue of this, where Batman's on a motorcycle, and everything's real stripped down, and you've got the cool bat suit without the arms, the like sleeveless bat suit.
Yeah, there's like a flooded subway. Because I remember they released that first page. Where it's like a kid, like, fishing in a subway.
Yeah.
And then that image of Batman you're talking about. And I didn't see vitriol for it. I remember people going, oh, cool. Like, he's doing his own origin, and it's very different from Year One. Like, just visually. Like, it's like a really bright Gotham. The colors in this book remind me of the original coloring of... Killing Joke. I don't know if you had that, but there's places where it's got that, like, really poppy colors.
I didn't really have that thought. I mean, I was thinking Killing Joke some during some of the Red Hood stuff, just because I think there's a little bit of, for obvious reasons, but I also think there's a little bit of aesthetic callback to that. But what I was going to say a second ago is the big thing I remember people talking about more than anything was, the Riddler's finally menacing, and the Riddler finally gets a big story, and we are. Yeah, I was like, ooh, yay, Riddler! We are, I think, at this point, kind of like a lot more inundated with like decent Riddler stuff. And we've kind of been there and done that a lot more now with the Riddler. But at the time, it was a big deal that he was being taken seriously, wasn't just a joke, and was the first major villain that Batman would fight. There was some question about how much sense that made with Death of the Family, because and it's been a long time since I read that, but like he's talked about there, like nobody takes him seriously and he's just a joke. And I think the idea is supposed to be that this is his like one big moment in the sun, and when he gets taken to Arkham, he's kind of laughed at after that. He's kind of a joke after that, which honestly makes a lot of sense given that. I did not remember this, Austin. He is the reason that Arkham becomes the kind of asylum that it is.
Yeah, I didn't remember that either.
They weren't taking criminals before. It was an insane asylum, but like now it's for the criminally insane. But just like this one, and there's this kind of throwaway line that Batman has at the end where he's like, "Hopefully this is temporary," and of course. It's not, and like everybody goes there after that, and so it kind of makes sense that he would be the butt of jokes after this.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
Well, it makes more sense in Death of the Family because it's so like it's been so long, and the idea is supposed to be that, like you said, he's never really had that moment again. So it's like you did this one really great thing, and you're a complete loser after that.
Yeah, we're kind of satirizing publication history with that too.
Yeah, it's weirder in War of Jokes and Riddles where they talk about him as a joke like directly after this book.
Yeah. Well, and I think, and again, it's been a long time since I read that too, but War of Jokes and Riddles, of course, is, I think, maybe placed at about the same place in that run this is, or maybe it's a couple more story arcs after or before that. Maybe it's actually really
fourth.
Oh, is it? Okay.
It's the fourth arc.
And this is, I think, also like the fourth arc, isn't it?
I think third.
Third? Okay. But more or less. I mean, it's a real similar kind of plays.
And these ones are longer. Or like these arcs are a lot longer.
Yes. Well, and this one was 12. They weren't all this long, I don't think.
No, Court of the Owls is, and then Death of the Family shorter.
Yeah. But I mean, I remember the Bloom thing being pretty long. I don't know if that was a whole year status quo with Gordon as Batman.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the name of that anymore. And I don't know how long Endgame is, but I'm rusty. The nice thing is this all reads, just fine without the rest of the run. Because obviously its origin, it's starting at the beginning. My big takeaway from this time around was actually twofold, and they're related, Austin. One is, I wish it could have just started here. And we didn't have to catch up to present day. Like, I wish this could have been the beginning of Batman, and then we just kept going from here, and we didn't have to do the, occasionally, and we didn't do this, but like the occasionally go back, do like a year 2, do a year 3, just see it all in sequence finally, and like we did with a lot of other characters for New 52. It was really kind of odd that Superman starts Morrison stuff like where it starts, and then we just keep going forward from there with the kind of street level Crusader thing, and then Batman has been around all that time, which is oddly kind of precedent for what we did with the DCEU. We're like, Batman's been there a long time and Superman's brand new.
Well, and I feel like Court of the Owls would make a lot more sense if it was directly after this,
a little earlier.
Mm-hmm. Maybe not directly after, but earlier, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And then the other thing is, I wondered if maybe... I mean, I've never looked deep into the history of this. There's a lot of different reasons this might have happened. But I found myself wondering if maybe when the New 52 was pitched to all the writers... we're like, this is what we're doing. We're starting everybody over. If maybe some of this gets in Snyder's head where he's like, oh, we're rebooting Batman. And then, oh, wait, no, we're not rebooting Batman. We're rebooting the rest of DC. And he's like, oh, but I got these cool ideas. So that he decides to go back and actually do that story. Or if it was... just like mandated, or if he just had the idea, well, let's go back and flesh it out anyway, though, because like he's got his own take on Batman. He wants to he wants to be able to go to those places, or because I was gonna say, or editorial said we want to reboot Batman also, but we've got to leave most of the history intact so you can go back later and do it. And like I don't know where all that starts.
One, I think either way, you'd probably run into issues similar to like post-crisis DC, where you have like a Wonder Woman that shows up way later, but Superman's already met the Teen Titans. You know,
Yeah.
I feel like stuff like that is probably why you wouldn't want to reboot Batman completely. Like, nobody really wants to start from square one with like the Robins, for example.
Yeah. Well, there were a lot of weird discrepancies in 52 like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I always point to, and again, I'm rusty. I mean, it's been a lot of years, but yeah, I always point to that thing at the beginning of Swamp Thing where like Death of Superman is referenced, and then never again. Like they decided to retcon that out. And,
Oh, I didn't realize that.
yeah,
Oh, okay. They never know what's going on.
there was a lot of weirdness with that. But what do you think? Like would you have liked to have seen like Capullo and Snyder just start with this and roll on?
Yeah, I think that'd be really interesting. I want more Capullo drawing the purple glove Batman.
Yeah, it's cool. Do you like that suit just overall?
So I remembered really liking that suit. Coming back to it, it's got like that new 52 thing where like I don't really like the like lines down the arms and the legs.
It's grown on me.
Yeah.
It has grown on me.
I like it more than like the mainline new 52 suit at the time. So I can give it that.
Yeah.
That's my only issue is I don't really like that stuff that he's got going down his limbs.
Well, and I meant to say that one of the big reasons that we had to kind of stick this, as I always say, in a bubble is because we were in the middle of Batman Incorporated with Morrison, and as much as I always thought that should have, especially when New 52 happened, just be in its own continuity probably. I mean, like, I get that that's not really fair because of all the history with Morrison and stuff, but, like, that should have been allowed to just keep going its own way and ignore, this should have ignored all of that. But that's not what ended up happening. I guess also if Snyder had started from this place, he would have needed a very different trajectory unless he stayed on the book for, like, 10 years. Right? Like, if he could have had a big 10-year plan, maybe it would have made sense to eventually get, like, you're right, Court of the Owls you could do real early, but, like, Death of the Family, obviously, that's a, years and years into Batman's career kind of story. Endgame as well, and he's setting some things up with Zero Year that won't pay off until Endgame, and some things that are directly connected to a little bit here and there, little nods at the very least, to things that he's already established. And it'd be really neat if it could have been like a Claremontian thing where he's, or Walt Simonson on Thor, where he's on the book for 10 years and he can, let Batman get started and have a whole career and then die at the end and just let somebody else either resurrect him or do another continuity or something after that. But you couldn't have done all of that in 3, 4, 5 years, I don't think.
Yeah, we got a reboot before then.
Yeah, exactly. I never, actually, now that you say that, I've never had that thought. Could you imagine if DC decided to do a reboot with a finite plan for how long the reboot would go, where they go, it's gonna be, it's gonna be this long, and then we're gonna have another crisis. Like, we know when the crisis is gonna be. We'll do it for 10 years, and then we'll tell all the stories we want to tell, and then we have a planned crisis to get out of it at the end. That'd be actually kind of cool.
That's what I think it's Jerry Conway pitches in the Mark Millar interviews.
Oh, is that right?
I think it's him. Yeah, he says
cool.
that comics should be handled in 10-year intervals.
Oh, we have talked about this, yeah. But I just never had the thought of like an intentional crisis.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
We start
the name, intentional crisis.
Start and end with one. Oh yeah, that's good. Deliberate crisis.
Exactly.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Pre-planned crisis.
So Zero Year is in 3 parts, 3 acts, essentially, and we have 3 different villains, although the Riddler is the big bad for the whole kit and caboodle. So even though you've got the Red Hood gang at the beginning, which is the birth of the Joker, which we'll talk about, you still have the Riddler pulling strings with that, not necessarily with the Riddler part of it, or with the Joker part of it. I meant to say this earlier. The War Jokes and Riddles thing is really interesting later, given that Riddler and Joker for Snyder's Batman are the 2 big villains that help birth the Joker, or sorry, help birth Batman.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking just now, I hadn't had this thought, but it's almost got the Batman Begins structure, right? Where the Red Hood gang is like the Carmine Falcone, or Dr. Death would be Scarecrow, and then the Riddler is Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah,
just obviously extended out because you have 12 issues,
right? But and if your Ra's al Ghul was there the whole time and he didn't like come in later, but
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, and then I was going to mention, Dr. Death is our bad guy for the second arc, but again, the Riddler is still there doing his machinations, and he even like floods the city in the middle of all of that, and then that leads to what I think of as kind of Zero Year proper, where suddenly we start to understand what that name even means at the end of it. And even though it's broken up into 3 parts, I think it's kind of uneven about the number of issues in each, is it not? Like the big flood section at the end is 4 issues. Are they all? Is it broken up 4, 4, and 4, or is it like 5, 3, and 4?
I'm not entirely sure because I was reading it in one big trade, so I wasn't paying like a ton of attention to the issue.
It
breakdown.
It felt uneven, like intentionally, because I was reading in singles, but I didn't actually look at the breakdown. I think one of the reasons
Death stuff I thought felt shorter.
It felt shorter, but I think one of the reasons that is also because there's a couple of oversized issues, and it's odd that 24 is like 53, 54 pages, and then big landmark issue 25, normal 22 pages.
Well, I mean,
it's kind of interesting.
Snyder was just a really big fan of 24, so.
Oh, okay, fair enough. So he needed it to be very long.
Exactly. That issue was supposed to be in real time, and then Capullo said you can't do that. That doesn't make sense in comics.
Side note, I always, as much sense as it would make it as it wouldn't make, I always wanted and there were 24 comics, which is very strange, but I always wanted a 24 comic that was like, this comic book takes place in real time.
Yes, don't mess up your reading or else you'll go out of real time.
So let's just kind of start back toward the beginning and hit kind of the big highlights. We'll do this in a very overview kind of fashion. We're already 25 minutes in, having talked about a lot of background and things. So we won't fine-tooth comb this. But Austin, as far as the first section with the Red Hood gang goes, well, actually, before we get there, let me just mention the title, because I said a minute ago, like, you don't really know what the title means until you get to the end. Zero Year, according to the Riddler, is about like the emptiness that is Gotham, and if Gothamites can't get smart enough to be worthy of surviving, he's going to literalize that and basically turn Gotham into a crater, and it'll be zero, nothing. When the book came out, and I think a lot of people probably assumed this when that first issue came out, 2021, 22. I think it's 21. I remember thinking, oh, that's kind of neat. I guess it's Zero Year because it's before Bruce Wayne becomes Batman, and then maybe you still would have your Year One. But it kind of reads like that plus Year One.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's almost like it starts with that idea, and then we hand it off to the emptiness idea after that. Though that thematically is still kind of there throughout.
Yeah, which is funny because I think it only takes place across a couple months. Like, maybe, at most.
I was going to ask you if you had any sense of time.
I think it's just over the summer, is the sense I get.
That's a busy summer, man. There's a lot of crazy crap that happens in that summer.
Ah, it's just Gotham. Apparently, after this, like every single major villain is introduced within like 12 months. So it
I
happens. It
guess. Yeah, well,
happens.
and it is absurd. It is. Issue 21. It is, of course, super absurd that all of Batman's history is supposed to have taken place within 5 years.
Mhm.
That was always goofy.
No, every single night is like an Arkham level night.
All of them. So, so I wanted to ask you how you feel about uh, our basically. Austin, are you there?
Yep. Did I
Sorry,
freeze up?
your face is frozen here for some reason.
Oh no.
I'm gonna try to fix that. Sorry, everybody. Yeah, I just had kind of a breakdown here with not a mental one, but but with my OBS.
It's a
There he is.
communication breakdown.
Exactly. Anyway, we're good now. But yeah, Austin, how do you feel about the way we do the origin for the Joker and the reinvention of Red Hood?
So I like the Red Hood gang stuff. I like that they still keep it open enough for the Joker. Like we don't entirely lose the Killing Joke like randomness thing of it. Of course, you have to lose it to an extent because that guy clearly becomes the Joker.
This is weird. The censored business.
Oh yeah,
Can we
I was
Can we quit
I was
doing
not
that?
a big.
We only did it twice in the whole book, but it keeps happening. And in one place, it happens with language, even though we also keep doing the symbols to censor swearing. Why are we doing both?
Yeah, well, the weirdest one is yeah, where he's like flipping off the Red Hood gang.
Yeah,
'Cause I've never
that's
seen it on
here.
art before. And then I part of so
Can you see the screen?
yeah, sorry, I was like shifted over,
Oh, no
but
problem. I just want to make sure that you can see what I'm showing. I
yeah,
didn't mean to interrupt you, but I was on that page and I was like, oh, I gotta mention that. It's weird.
no, it is really weird. So part of me is also happy that they they referenced All Star Batman and Robin, but at the same time they
Oh,
censor
that
it.
is where it is. The GD Batman. Yeah.
Yeah, but they also censor it, so it's like one step forward, two steps back.
Yeah, and what is this, television? Because they don't censor the word damn,
Mm,
which shows up.
yeah, and like there's blood and stuff. I don't know. It's really weird and like why did we feel the need to censor somebody like flipping someone off? Like
Yeah, I don't know what the rules are. I don't know how arbitrary that is.
it feels like a choice before like a mandate. But
It
I could be wrong.
does. Yeah. Where like that's supposed to be part of the fun of it or something. And I will say, as dark as this gets, and as much as Snyder is really leaning into his horror sensibilities with Batman, which is always where he's at his best, by the way. There are story types for Batman that he is no good at, but when he leans back into his kind of almost like gothic horror sensibilities, that's when it's at its best, and he's doing that all over the place with this. But there's still a wonderful sense of fun
Mm.
throughout that I found kind of refreshing all over again with this.
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like Snyder like wrote a list of everything that you can say about year one and was like, okay, I'm gonna not do this. Like this panel you
Yeah,
have up here, for example. I like that Batman's scary, but he's almost like a Freddy Krueger ghoul. Where he's like got like all these people that he's made up into a bat, and he looks down and he's like, "My bat needs a
my bat
head."
needs a head. Yeah, and he's having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
This is kind of a one-linery Batman.
Mhm. No, this is a very jokey Batman, which is funny to me because I don't remember his other arcs being like that. But I don't know if that's just because it's been so long.
Well, that's what I like about it, though, is I don't think they are entirely. I mean, I think he does sometimes have a sense of humor, and I think personality-wise, tell me if you agree with this, I think Snyder begins and ends with Batman TAS.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think he starts with the animated series, where you have a Batman that has plenty of darkness, plenty of gloom, but there is a whole person in there still,
Mhm.
and so
I almost wanted
he
to give it a
finds
thumbs up.
he does find the comedy in things.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a straight up smile on his face at the end of this book. At the end of the story, I should say, after like the saddest sequence in the whole thing. That
Yeah.
basically says Batman will never be happy. Turn the page, and he is like roping through Gotham with this big smile on his face. It's wonderful.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. That's great.
Like he'll never be able to make a life with a woman. Turn the page. Happiest guy, and it's great. But anyway, getting ahead of ourselves. So Red Hood.
Hmm. Yeah, so I like the Red Hood thing because for this type of a story, you just need a gang, and I think they fill the job very well. It kind of mixes the like supervillain thing with just the gang aspect, and it because he doesn't really go to the like Falcone place. Falcone's mentioned, but we don't really see like any normal gangs in Gotham.
It's not really that like gangster drama or crime drama.
No, they're more like terrorists.
Mm-hmm. And really all the way through. Yeah, the whole thing reads a lot more like terrorist fiction,
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
doesn't
because
it?
the Riddler, of course, is very terroristy. Doctor Death is more like a horror villain, but
Yes, but he's
there
like
is an
working with a terrorist, so that's
yeah.
still in there, and it's and it's still detective fiction.
Hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely.
This being as much of all the way through a detective story as it is, I almost wanted it in the detective book because I kept kind of being reminded of all of it. I mean, this is like a very action heavy book, and the action's really good all the way through it. A lot of really creative setups and stuff. I think my favorite issue is the giant blimp issue, like where Batman has a bat blimp. That's so freaking cool. I
It's like the most impractical bat vehicle you could have.
He makes as good of a case for it as he possibly can in that
I love that
particular
it's
issue.
immediately
It's
destroyed.
immediately destroyed. It's like it's not gonna make sense to ever use this again.
It's like God looked down and said, "Yeah, that's stupid," and destroyed it.
Well, and the best part is where he goes, "Yeah, it already came in black." Like it's not like he's gonna have time to change that. No, it's great, but you get these big set pieces. You get absurd stuff like that. You get big bombastic action like Batman's fighting lions, and that's the big thing a lot of people remember from this is Batman's fighting lions. But
Yeah, that reminded me of the Wagner Mad Monk book. I think there's a part where he fights wolves in that,
oh, crazy!
and because
But
we're both doing Golden Age villains, we never do anything with.
yes. But the point I'm trying to make is it still doesn't feel too grandiose like a lot of Batman stories during this period do, and even some of Snyder's stuff itself. Like, and it helps that it's not insanely high tech. It's still more high tech than you would expect for in origin for Batman. It does start in that place, but I think that's because if this is only supposed to be 5 years ago, it's not like he's not going to have access to some of the more futuristic tech that he has later on, and like Wayne Enterprises is developing some of it. So, and we're seeing the origin of some of what we've seen already, I think, in Snyder's run, right? Like you have the holographic like 3D imaging map thing. I think we've already seen that in this run, and this is the beginning of it. I may be wrong about that.
I think you see that in the first issue, if I remember correctly.
That's what I was recalling,
Hmm.
but I'm not trusting my memory.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've read that stuff.
Sorry, I just wanted to make that point real quick. But what do you think about the explanation for, uh, or for kind of the way we have our cake and eat it too, where we do see the origin of the Joker, but we don't know who is under the mask, and we make kind of a big deal out of the mystery of we don't even know when he came in. Like the guy that falls in the acid is definitely the guy that becomes the Joker. Beyond that, we don't know anything else.
Hmm. Yeah, I really like that aspect where it's like, oh, well, he could have replaced them just now or like a year ago. Like, I have no idea. I do really like that aspect. I do think it gets too cutesy where Alfred has that line where he goes, oh, the multiple choice option, then Master Bruce, and it's like that's a little too cutesy.
Oh, it didn't even occur to me that that was any kind of a reference, but yeah, that's fair. And then that gets even funnier when later on you have the setup for three Jokers.
Oh God. Oh God.
Multiple choice.
They should have had three men fall into the thing.
Oh my God. Yeah, you just have these Red Hoods all dropping from balconies
Yeah, exactly.
into various vats of acid.
Mm.
The Joker could be any of these guys, or
all of them. All of the above.
Yeah, it does have a little bit of prequelitis and kind of like intentionally in a couple places. It's minimal, it's not horrible about it, but there's a couple of places where, particularly with the like the epic nature of Batman and Joker's relationship, where we have to make a really big deal out of these two are going to do this forever. They're supposed to be the opposite sides of the coin. Like they have that kind of already, and it's almost like Red Hood 1, who will become the Joker, has seen the future or something. It's almost like he already knows how all this is going to play out. And I was going to ask you if you feel like he is too much the Joker already.
Yeah, I think there's an aspect to that, especially like there's moments where he's like, oh, like this guy, like he's I forget exactly like how he describes him, but he talks about him as like the super important thing in his life when he's talking about Batman. And you have that Joker-y thing where, because
he keeps referring to Batman as my little vigilante.
Yeah. But like, just like weird. Year one, you have the thing where instead of dressing up like Batman at first, he's dressed up as like he's just like in a disguise.
Which is cool because Batman is often a master of disguise. And it makes a lot of sense that he would start that way. Like, usually we'll just put him in a ski mask or something. And here, I think that's so intelligent. Mm-hmm. Like, it's super logical that he would go, well, I'm not going to have, like the standard disguise I'm going to wear. I'm going to just go in as, like, various, but nobody will ever know who I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like a step above year one. Because year one, he wears, like, a scar, and he's got, like, I think he slicks his hair back or something. Well, here he's wearing, like, full-on face masks.
Yeah.
But then, like, he becomes Batman, obviously, and Red Hood 1's like, oh, you're the guy, which is very Joker-like, where he can tell that it's, the same guy.
Well, and there's the same kind of randomness and unpredictability about the Joker in the way the whole Red Hood gang operates, which makes you wonder if he invented that or if he got the idea from them and then took over and got rid of the original guy, because we know that there was somebody else in that mask who got killed, but it's hard. But then the Red Hood gang started maybe acting differently, like their MO might have changed after he took over. So it's hard to say like how much of the anarchy and the obsession with chaos and randomness and like because he says the whole point is to prove to the city that nothing really matters, and I guess that whole emptiness 0 year thing idea starts there, but really subtly, like in a way that you wouldn't necessarily put it together unless you looked at this a couple of times once you get to the Riddler stuff at the end. But I guess it bookends with that. But he's talking about that, and then Batman has this whole speech about how he's full of crap. They censor the S word, but not with a censored word with the symbols. But he says that Batman says you're full of the S word. He says you're just an evil man looking for an excuse to do evil things. And I could see somebody, it doesn't bother me too much, but I could see somebody saying, he seems like too much of the Joker before he gets thrown into the vat of acid. But then, what's kind of interesting about it is, maybe he adopts, maybe he starts to actually believe in what he was selling after he becomes the Joker, and Batman was more right about it before he falls in the vat.
Mm-hmm. Well, does that play into Endgame? Because I haven't read it, but I know that that's all, like, Joker's like always been around or whatever.
Yeah, I haven't read that in a long time, so I don't remember exactly what his whole thing is there. But I remember him kind of acting like all roads were supposed to be leading to that place. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because one thing I thought was really interesting here is Batman uses the word endgame. And I don't know if that's an intentional setup or if Snyder
Probably, 'cause that's
remembered that he had that line, and so he later on decides to use that title. But Batman has this line where he's talking about not knowing what Red Hood 1's end game will be, and it's shortly thereafter where it becomes very clear that Red Hood 1 is the Joker, or will be.
Yeah, I'd imagine that's intentional because it's the next arc. So even if it's just like a rewrite, like later on after he realized that.
I guess I forgot that was the very next arc.
Yeah, because it's Joker arc, this Joker arc.
Yeah. So yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. There's a few things like that where I'm like, I don't know if this is intentional or not. Like the word bloom keeps coming up. It's like 3 or 4 times. Well, that seems like a weird
coincidence. Yeah, you said that to me, and I was like, "Bloom, like that must just be like an Endgame thing, I guess, because I haven't read it." But that's the
it's the villain
Batman thing.
Yeah, Bloom is the villain of that art.
Oh, okay.
It's like a guy with a giant flower for a head. That's not Elseed in the Tick.
Okay.
Yeah, he's creepy. He's like, and he's like a real classic Snyder kind of villain, where he's tall and lanky. He's got these really weird hands with super long fingers, and he's got a flower for a head.
He should have been called Piranha Pete.
Sure, that would have been much more menacing than what we got. By the way, you mentioned that you've got some early Batman villains from Golden Age that we never use. That's one of the reasons I found myself wishing that this could have just continued.
Yeah, I'd like to see more of that. Give me Hugo Strange and the Monster Men.
Right? Well,
they
did a whole Monster Men thing in New 52.
But
yeah.
It was bad?
I think that was maybe part of Batman Eternal. I can't remember. It's been too long. And Batman Eternal starts right during this because there's an issue that interrupts Zero Year that is like a prelude to that, or like a sneak peek at Batman Eternal. And then we get back into this. Because if you read this in singles, you have to skip that issue. I think it's 28, maybe.
Oh, weird. Okay. The stuff you never realize when you only read in trade.
Yeah. The nice thing is it doesn't make a really big deal out of it if you're reading it in singles. So, like, the cover is, like, Batman Eternal, and then you get into it and it's clear it has nothing to do with this anymore, and the very first page is, I think, Harper Row stuff, and you're like, oh, this is not what I was reading. And then, but it's funny because I'm so used to fill-in issues with comics being written and drawn by an entirely different team, that it was very strange to see it the exact same people, where it's like Snyder, Tinian, Capullo. And I'm like, that's so weird. Maybe it wasn't Capullo. Maybe somebody else drew it. But Snyder and Tinian.
Is this the last?
Oh, maybe
Batman?
Monster Men was Rebirth, Jareth Gerhardt. Yeah. I'm gonna say so many. I'm gonna have so many mistakes in reviews of stuff from this old. That's this old, because I read this stuff in forever, and I haven't continued to keep up. So we are going to review some of the new stuff that just started, though, with their kind of Rebirth-ish relaunch, because I've been hearing good things about some of that, and we're gonna try to do a kind of a special on that, just going through a few number ones. It'll be the first time in years we've talked about new comics.
Yeah,
I'm going to try to do that when I get back from my vacation. I'm excited about it.
Hell yeah. Yeah, is this the last time that we've had like a big Batman run like this with one artist? Because with King, it's like shifting every arc.
Yeah, it definitely is. Well, and you haven't had too much after that, because I mean, King had a very long run that ended prematurely, but it was long. And then after that, you had Tinian for like a while,
stuff, right?
but it was effectively a fill-in thing. And then you've got what's his name that came over from Daredevil, I think.
Zdarsky. He's still on it.
That's on it right now. Yeah.
I don't know if he's switching.
But I'm just saying he hasn't been on it long enough to. Well, and then with relaunching everything, I'm going to assume that the new Batman #1 is somebody else. But I don't actually know that because I haven't been keeping up at all.
I don't think so because it just started. So I think, because I think he's only on his second arc, so I think they kept him.
Oh, okay. Well, of course, we did some of that even with New 52.
Hmm. Yeah, that was probably like early enough they could be like, we just got a new guy in that.
Well, I say that. No, we picked a new person for all the different books, but we had talent that we were kind of setting up, kind of grooming to take over for books, right? So like Snyder wasn't doing Batman, but he had an arc in Detective, and then he went over to Batman, which is still my favorite Snyder arc overall. But this is almost tied with it, or maybe nearly overtakes it after reading it again here, but.
Yeah, I still got to read Black Mirror.
I thought you and I reviewed that together. Maybe we didn't.
No, it was you and Kareem.
Oh, that's right. I forgot you weren't there. Sorry, Kareem. I should have invited Kareem to this.
That's what you said the last two.
Yeah, he's not gonna want to be friends with me anymore. He's gonna be like, why do you never invite me to anything? In my defense, it's because we'd start these way too late, and I don't think to invite people because it's so late for people to start.
Yeah, it's always my fault.
It's nice of you guys to watch us live when we start so late. But anyway, we should get back into this. So yeah, you've got you got the Red Hood gang, and that's.
How do you feel about
having it as? Let me finish this thought real quick.
Oh yeah.
Having this as a whole gang, I think, is new, but starting with Red Hood obviously makes a lot of sense because that's classically the Joker, and then you have. Although, let me ask you this, because I can't remember. Was that whole thing... That whole thing wasn't actually invented for Killing Joke, was it?
No, there is an old... I don't know if it's like late Golden Age or early Silver Age, but there is like an old Batman issue where he fights the Red Hood. And then I think there's like a flash forward at the end of it, and it's like, oh, by the way, that was the Joker.
Okay, I thought so, but I didn't want to be wrong about that, so I was leaving it up in the air. I wasn't sure, but anyway, so you've got that's classic, and then you have Dr. Death, which is a super early Batman villain, and then putting the Riddler in the mix and making him the main villain for this might seem a little counterintuitive, but he is a very early Batman villain, and he's a one-off for a long time. Like he shows up, and then. He doesn't do anything for like 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, because he's not like one of the first, but like
but like
he's within like the first
41 or 42.
Yeah,
it's still pretty early.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
So I'm saying like, it kind of makes sense to throw him in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. Although. We should have tried to like fit in all of the early villains, like throw in the Monster Men and throw in Mad Monk. They're all connected.
Well, and I appreciate, speaking of cuteness, that he's not finding a way to get in like the origins or like snippets of early versions of every villain you can think of. We do a couple of them. He really reels himself in with it. Like I think Snyder is very sober about all of that. There's a cameo for the Penguin, and it's even less of a cameo than it looks like in the first place because Bruce is pretending to be the Penguin, and then when you see the actual Penguin, he's just tied up in like 2 panels, and that's all you see him. And you see Pamela Isley, and that's it, I think.
Mm-hmm. No, we could have gone way farther with that. You could have gotten like really cutesy and had Dick Grayson show up. You could have done Harvey Dent.
Yeah,
there's a lot more stuff you could have done there.
And you have nods to things here and there. There's a Robin symbol that keeps showing up everywhere, and I'm not sure what it's supposed to be. Yeah. That was a question I had. Like, and it's in flashbacks even. Bruce's dad has it on a hat.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? It's the Robin symbol. I kept thinking maybe it was his school. Maybe it's the symbol for his private school, but oh, wait a minute. Maybe I do know what it is. Hang on.
You figured it out.
No, I don't know if okay, so help me out because we read 12 issues.
Yeah.
There's toward the end, we keep getting references to something that's called Robin. but I think it's spelled differently. It's got like two B's or something.
Oh, I don't remember that at all.
But I can't remember right now what exactly it was. I'm thinking maybe it was that, because I was thinking maybe that was the school and it was like Robin something. But I don't think I'm right about that. So anyway, I don't know what that is, but it keeps showing up. It's on a like a mug and a hat, and it's everywhere.
It's the Court of the Owls.
Yeah, it's like the number 23. I started getting paranoid about it.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just kidding. Austin, what is your favorite part of this book? Like, where do you think it's at its best?
Um, I think for me personally, I feel like I'm going to be the only one here. For me, it's the Doctor Death stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I really liked the horror aspect. I really liked Batman investigating the murders. That was like the main thing that not like the main thing because I really like this book overall, but that was like the big thing that I liked over like more than the rest of it. I think that's just so much more like the stuff I want to see in Batman, I guess.
Well, and that's the stuff Snyder is best at writing.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, and I thought their Doctor Death,
Capullo
he's like a monster guy, but he's pretty creepy.
Capullo's great at drawing that stuff too. I mean, he's tapping into the best stuff he did in Spawn when he goes to those places. Like, Dr. Death just looks like a Spawn villain.
But, like, creepy at the same time. It's really interesting.
Yeah. I don't want to say that the best story stuff is during the Dr. Death parts, and yet my favorite issue, at least, I don't know, the one I found just most fun to read is the end of the Dr. Death stuff, because that's the blimp. And I love the blimp.
The on the big balloon is really cool.
Oh yeah, it's awesome.
Mm-hmm. No, and I love that like creepy thing where Batman like bends his bones so that like ties around the railings. Like, that's so cool. And then Dr. Death's like head starts growing antennas and Batman rips them off.
Yeah, that's all real messed up.
Yeah, that's so cool.
What do you think of Dr. Death's kind of motivation compared to the other villains in this? Like, at first I thought it was a little confused, and then I started to kind of appreciate it more on a second, kind of skim through.
Mm-hmm. He's probably the least interesting of all the villains.
Yeah.
So there is that, but I thought it was fine. I liked him as just like a big horror monster, serial killer.
Yeah, I just kept trying to figure out what Snyder was saying with him versus like Red Hood and Riddler, because his whole thing is with Dr. Death. His whole I guess the main theme of all of this is again emptiness. So the idea is Dr. Death doesn't think that, like, he's anti the love conquers all message. And so he thinks that you have to improve yourself to be able to help anyone else, and that you can't trust that anyone is ever going to be there for you, which fits into partly Bruce's motivations for becoming Batman in the first place, and his feelings that like nobody was there for him when his parents died, like somebody should have stopped it. And Dr. Death is, I think, supposed to be like a grotesque perversion of that idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I do like Dr. Death as like the mad scientist archetype of, wanting to find this cure for, I forget what it is exactly. It's something with bones.
Yeah.
Oh, it regrows your bones, I think. It's almost like a lizard thing, I guess.
Well, and he has the same thing that archetype with comic book villains always has, where he starts turning people into one of him. He at least doesn't have a big biological weapon that does it to the whole city or anything, but we do start seeing some people transform into that crazy creepy skull phase.
But he's also doing it to kill them, so it's better.
Oh, that's true. He's not like
making them into more of him. They're just like mutating and breaking.
It's not trying to speed up evolution.
Yeah, exactly. It becomes like a poison that he injects you with.
Yeah.
So it becomes like a really cool, just like creepy way of killing somebody, almost like a Joker toxin thing.
I feel like of the three, yeah, that's a good call. And we keep talking about how he kind of reminds us of Scarecrow a little bit.
Mhm. He's basically that role in Begins, where he's got the formula thing that the real main villain is going to use to attack the city.
Yeah, of the three villains, I guess he's the one that most kind of comes from an actual place. Like the other two kind of pretend like they have a real point, and like the Red Hood one is a lot more sadistic, but he's, if Batman's right anyway, he's pretending like he's trying to prove something to the world, and he's got this nihilistic message, right? And then the Riddler is working under the pretense of like helping people self-improve, but obviously it's really much more of a revenge thing. It's, I'm brilliant, nobody ever noticed me, and so I'm trying to punish everyone, right? And then with Dr. Death, it's he's he maybe there's a part of him that actually really is trying to improve people. Like, I'm not sure that it's as much pretense as the other two. You know what I mean? He's the closest to actually having a point, even though it's still a real screwed up kind of ideology.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like that idea that he has on the balloon where he says something like, like I'm gonna keep working to finish my thing. Sure, I'm not gonna live to
Yeah.
see it made, but like at least it'll finally happen.
Yeah,
And
that's what I was gonna say. Is he's the least self-serving of the three,
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. I also just realized while
and
you
he's
were
ultimately
saying
just a
that,
patsy for the Riddler.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. He's essentially a henchman. I realized why you were saying that, not so much in motivation, but I think the reason why I latched on to the Doctor Death stuff the most is that he's basically like a cross between Scarecrow and Killer Croc and how we use them, and those are my two favorite Batman villains. So
Okay.
that probably helps.
I wanted to ask you about this scene. I don't know what's happening in this scene. So we have a lot of nonlinear in this story, and occasionally we'll interrupt everything with like one page or even a couple of panels where we'll jump back and we'll show you some like flash of Bruce's life, and we don't always even know what it means until later. But this one I never fully understood. So Bruce, like while he's on his like crusade to learn everything he can learn while he's faked his own death, he is in what looks like a dirigible or something, and he gets pulled out of it, and then some guy hands him a phone and says your father's on the phone, and then the scene's over. And it's like connecting to, it's like it's maybe a memory or something, because it's connecting to the scene that in present day where he wakes up from I think fighting Dr. Death, and he's talking
Yeah.
to Alfred, and Alfred is telling him, talk to me. So the person on the phone might be saying something similar, or might be saying nothing. We don't know. But what is the scene? What is happening here?
Is this supposed to be that scene that Alfred describes later on where Bruce's uncle was gonna, like, they found out where Bruce was and his uncle was gonna take him out, and Alfred says he hired somebody to bring a phone to Bruce so that he could talk. Is
Oh,
it supposed to be this scene? I didn't have that thought until just
maybe
now.
it is, and then maybe that guy thought that Alfred was his father, and
Mhm.
Bruce doesn't say anything because he's like, well, I know that can't be my father, so he doesn't even know that it's Alfred. That must be what it is.
Well, and he talks later on about how like he needed an Alfred while he was gone, so he like paid a homeless man to be Alfred.
That whole thing is, yeah,
And he's crying in that scene, so like maybe he's like breaking down, but he can't bring himself to answer.
I'm with you. I think that must be what that is. Hey, let's take this opportunity to talk about the kind of new additions to Bruce's origin pre-Batman, like when his parents die,
Yeah.
and and like just the new ways in which he's haunted and all of that. Because I think there's some kind of inspired and profound additions. The whole business about his almost lobotomizing himself so that he doesn't have to
Yeah.
remember his parents' death and where he's come from and all of that, because he knows he'll never have a normal life and everything. I was fully won over by that.
So there's like a
That
moment
that's
when
messed up, but it
there's a
got me.
moment when Bruce first starts describing this where he's like, I paid them to do this. And I'm like, you're losing me. I don't know about that. That's a wonky choice. And then Bruce goes, and right at the last second, I didn't go through with it. And I was like, oh, thank God. Okay, that's great.
What's really interesting is then when you get to the last arc in Snyder's run, he will get full on amnesia. And basically, that does end up happening to him.
Oh, okay. I wonder if that's purposeful, like setup for that, or
That's another place where I couldn't tell
maybe just like an idea he had.
if it was a coincidence or if it was an intentional setup. I couldn't tell you.
Hmm. If only he was lobotomized in that story and it wasn't just amnesia.
One month
Month later.
later. I'm looking at the end of the book here because this is where that we're given the panels for that.
Yep.
I Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I just yeah. But no, I like that quite a bit. That whole scene of Bruce explaining why like he can't have a normal life to Alfred is really great. The ending of this book, I think, in general, might be my favorite part of the book in terms of just like a scene.
Yeah.
Because obviously the Doctor Death stuff is like a whole segment. When I said that was my favorite part, but just like as a scene, this is the best scene of the book, I
Well,
think.
and when you're talking about like subjectively your favorite thing with stuff, like there's what's the most effective stuff in the book, and then there's the stuff that speaks to you personally the most, right? And I think that last issue, front to back, is probably the most effective material in the whole book.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably why it's it's the best thing he did outside of Black Mirror, because it sticks to the landing so well, and he put so much care into setup and payoff and where everything's going, and the way all the thematic stuff is handled is real subtle and nuanced.
Yeah, it's not the issue I've heard you complain about with some of his other stuff where it just becomes the characters explaining the book to you.
No, I
It
feel
doesn't do
like
that.
there's actually material for us to mine where we're allowed to have an interpretation of it. Because when you get into Endgame, he just interprets everything on the page for you. It's the Joker saying, like, and this means this, and this means this. And
What is this, a Christopher Nolan movie?
I'm like, thanks, Seagull from The Little Mermaid. Like, quit explaining everything to me. There are places where it borders on that, but it never goes full tilt. Toward the beginning, there are bits where I'm not sure how I feel about word choice. Like, you have Alfred. He has that whole breakdown toward the beginning of why, or toward the end of the first act, if this is a 3-act thing, where he is suggesting that people, if they believe in Batman, won't want to know Batman's secret identity. And he says, we've built this now into the mythos. And I'm like, I don't know how I feel about some of the word choice. We're talking about it too much, like, fans talking about it might talk about it.
Hmm. Yeah, it's Alfred when he's saying that he's explaining why people won't figure out that he's Batman because Bruce is like, they're gonna figure out in like a day.
Yeah.
hmm Um, oh yeah, but like the other Golden Age thing we bring back here is Julie Madison,
Yes.
uh, which I didn't remember that came up here.
I didn't remember that either. And we get a quick flashback to it where they're dating like real for a real short period. Is he in high school or college?
It's either high school or college because you
I
mentioned
couldn't
that to me. You
tell.
were like, "Oh, he's." Uh, I didn't realize he dated her before being Batman, and
Yeah.
I started to text you. I was like, "Yeah, they were college," and then I went,
And that's why I wrote
and then went back.
when I was talking to you. That's why I wrote before Batman because I started to write high school. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure either. So at some point when he's in school, he goes out with Julie Madison.
Is
And
that
she
that
comes
that
back
school
at
with
the
the Robin logo on all the hats?
end.
Maybe.
Yeah,
I still
possibly.
don't know what that was.
But yeah, you get this great scene where Bruce explains why he can't ever be with anyone, and then he's like, "I'll leave it up to you, Alfred, if you want to set me up with her or not." And then he walks over, and you get this whole sequence where he brings her over to Bruce, and then they go on a date, and then they have kids, and they're going to the movies. And Bruce looks over happy, and he says, "Thank you, Alfred."
He
And then
grows his Thomas Wayne mustache.
yeah, exactly. And then we smash cut back to Alfred in front of Julie Madison, and he's like, "No, he's taken. I'm sorry." And then we get the big full page spread of Batman,
Yeah.
and that is just like everything I feel about Batman and relationships summed up in one scene, and it's so good.
Yeah. It's kind of all you need even after you've read 12 issues. Like if you just read that sequence, oh, Snyder understands this character.
Yeah. No, I want to see that adapted into like a short film. Like that's such just a good little scene that is its own story right there.
Yeah, well, and you said again off camera when you read this because I hadn't got to the end yet, and you sent me a message and you said, "Oh, Snyder doesn't like Rises, does he?" And I was like, I don't know what he's talking about. And then I got to the end of this because I hadn't read this in so long, and I was like, oh, that's what he's talking about. Yeah. Do you think that that was a direct response to fans going back and forth about whether or not the end of Rises is really happening when Alfred sees Bruce at the in the outdoor coffee place or whatever?
Possibly. I just thought it rises because the whole like I've never liked that it ends with Bruce settling down with somebody and going off and leaving the Batman thing. And while reading it, I was like, oh, I feel like Snyder agrees with me in this scene. I
I
don't
thought you said that because it's clear that that is Alfred imagining something.
no, it was entirely
Because I think the end of Rises is clearly not that.
yeah, no, it's definitely not that.
Definitely not that.
People went, oh, he made Inception last. This also has to be something like that.
Well, what's annoying, not to get too far into this again, but what's annoying about Rises is that you've got two kind of contradictory things that are true, right?
Mhm.
There's no way that Batman got away from that bomb in time and could have survived that, and also he's definitely alive at the end.
Yeah. But like I also, on that train of thought, like when you have the taken over city thing, I'm like, this is in a lot of ways a better version of Rises. 'Cause I think that stuff works better than it does there too.
Yeah. Well, and I was thinking about uh, Rises and the Batman kind of simultaneously
Mhm.
throughout this,
Yeah.
because it is kind of like a combination in a weird way, even though the Batman didn't exist yet and was influenced by this book clearly, where you have a kind of similar uh, plot with the Riddler in the way he takes the city over. Uh, so like kind of that revolution thing, except he's more of a terrorist. Like he's not a social revolution.
Mhm.
I mean, Bane's isn't either, but he's not really pretending like it is. But I guess he's doing the same thing Bane is doing in that it's that false hope thing. Like the trap door is the same thing as the walking out on the ice, except except nobody makes you do a riddle first in Rises.
No, you got to talk to Scarecrow because got to fit him in somewhere.
He's got to be up there.
He's not even the same character anymore, but he's there.
But yeah, it's kind of both of those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, and I like that. That's very Riddler. The whole you have to approach him and give him a riddle that he can't answer to free the city, and if you don't, he drops you down into the Rancor pit.
Dagon Spear, who says Bruce didn't drop out of the bat before he even left the city? Because if he did, that scene is being manipulative in the way it's edited. Because we see him in the cockpit of it, and the way the light is hitting the inside of it is clearly supposed to be the cockpit of it. And so if I don't want to talk about this too much, but because obviously I've done my rounds on this, but if that was supposed to be like minutes and minutes ago, it's manipulative because there's nothing else edited like that in those movies.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's one of two scenes where things are randomly out of order for no reason in Rises, because Rises has some like wonky editing that people don't really talk about, but it does.
And he's got this look on his face like, I'm not gonna survive this. What's his look? What's he reacting to? What's that response? If he knows that he's gonna get out in time and the bomb is gonna explode away from the city, what's the sadness on his face? Well, what's he worried? Just the fact that he's gonna have to fake his own death and like Batman's done? Is that all it is? Like, maybe.
I think it's because he got stabbed.
Dagon Spear, unless he's still in the cockpit and it's an escape pod, then give us that somewhere finally, right? Like, that last scene doesn't tell you how he escaped, and so it feels like a cheat.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I don't know. 11 years later, I'm still talking about this.
Yep.
What else do we need to hit with this? I mean, we haven't talked about the Riddler all that much.
How do you feel about the Riddler in this book?
Just in general? First of all, I think that Snyder writes some of the best Riddler riddles I've ever read in a book. I think he's very, very good at that.
Yeah, this made me scratch my monkey head and be like, man, writing the Riddler must suck.
Oh, yeah, I know, me too. And it makes you laugh at the bad ones in like the Gotham TV show and stuff so much more when it's done that well.
When somebody just Googled riddles.
It's funny because this isn't even a Riddler riddle, but in particular, I was impressed with the crossword puzzle clue with Duke Thomas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the 6-letter word for hit or miss. Strike.
Strike, yeah. And then that comes back again toward the end with the big mission to try to find and take the Riddler out. Where we keep using the word strike. Like, that's all set up really, really nicely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
I like that Riddler is simultaneously... to get back to the initial question, I like that the Riddler is simultaneously menacing and not overly complicated and still what that character always was. Like, in my head, I had John Glover's voice from animated series. He's that version, basically, except maybe a little bit more sadistic. But I mean, his backstory is different. Where he wasn't like screwed out of his rights for something like he is with the video game thing in animated series. But he's this brilliant guy that he feels like nobody appreciates his brilliance, and that whole breakdown of like how smart people only notice smart things when they like evolve the culture in some way, or they invent something that like everybody starts using. That all really rang true, and where you could kind of see where Riddler's like narcissism, but also his inferiority complex all comes from. And I just love that he's pathetic and scary. I mean, it's great. Like as much as I like the way he was handled in the Batman, I really like that he's able to have this really scary plot here and do some really screwed up stuff, kind of like he does in the Arkham games. But we don't change what he is at all. Like he doesn't have to be turned into like this sad starving orphan and all of that, which again is fine. That reinvention, it's handled really well in that movie. But I like that it's possible to do both. That he can be the pathetic. The pathetic guy he always was, and he starts from this really menacing place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I like that he's still got that like annoying nerd thing going on, and especially like in their final confrontation, like Batman's almost more like annoyed that he has to deal with it because the Riddler's just annoying. But like you said, like he is threatening at the same time because he's always, a step ahead.
Well, and he still pulls Batman down to a pretty low point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this has that the Batman thing too, where Batman's wet behind the ears, so like he probably should have been able to figure it out easier than he does.
That's a great point.
And
I like that he needs help.
Mm-hmm.
He's got he's got a whole team behind him at the end. The Gordon and Fox team up is really satisfying after the way they've been developed throughout the books and throughout the issues, and how they both start as potential antagonists for Bruce Wayne. Gordon more so. There's this kind of like cheat moment with Fox where you think that he is working with Dr. Death, and he injects Bruce in the neck, and you think that it's with the cocktail thing that Dr. Death is using, and then it turns out that it's an antidote, and he's really he's overly dramatic about that. Where he's like, "I've been working for the bad guy the whole time," and then the next issue
turns into Reanimator.
I just saved your life. You're like, okay, that's a little cheap.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But like he starts in this really antagonistic place with Gordon, and for a second, I'm like, it reads a little, or more than a second, it reads a little bit like we're doing that prequel thing, right? Where our best friends have to hate each other at first.
I thought we were going to like that Earth 1 place at first, and then we flip it.
And then later, and I don't remember what Earth 1 does with it now. It's been too long.
Well, Earth 1, Gordon's a corrupt cop, and then it's through working with Batman that gets him off that.
You're right. Here they try to make us think that he's corrupt, and that's why Bruce doesn't like him. And it turns out it's because he is... Well, I mean, that is why Bruce doesn't like him to some degree, because he actually thinks that Gordon is corrupt because he got a coat as a present from because we make a real big deal out of Gordon's coat, and it's like this massive symbol in the book, which I know you like a lot. So we should probably talk about the coat. Nice coat, but it turns out that he's got a really good reason for why he looked corrupt but wasn't actually, so that was a fake out, kind of like, now that I'm thinking about it, the way that Bruce's parents being corrupt in the Batman is a fake out.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually a little similar to that, but I think there's a little bit of you, Gordon, indirectly had something to do with the events in play in the day that my parents died. Like, I got the sense that there is a little bit of animosity because of that. Like, if Gordon hadn't arrested him that day, events of that day work out differently where his parents probably wouldn't have been killed in that alley.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that, and that realization of, oh, he's not actually out to protect anyone. Like, that's also part of it, too, where, like, that's part of the reason why his parents died.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was the thing I wanted to talk about earlier. The going back to the new additions to Bruce's origin and the ways in which he's haunted. I I mean, I liked all of that stuff. The idea that Bruce is a little bit of this kind of, I don't want to say like lost soul, but he's a little wayward, like when he's a kid. That all rang true. Where like he's this rich kid that is trying to find himself, and everybody's telling him who he is when he's at home, so he keeps like running off to the city to try to figure out who he wants to be, and
He's like Simba.
and that explaining, yeah, who's this Pumbaa?
um, Alfred.
and that and that explaining uh why one of the big reasons anyway that he has such a love for the city was great. I really like the payoff for that with the big why do you love the city speech. And I like just all the stuff that Bruce Wayne does out of costume in this, by the way. I like that all the villains are connected to Bruce Wayne himself in some way.
Yeah. Well, I like that he realizes what the Red Hoods are gonna do, and he realizes it's too big for Batman, so he just holds a press conference as Bruce Wayne outside of
Ace Chemicals?
Ace Chemicals where they're making their weapons, and he's like, "Yeah, behind me, they're doing some crazy stuff in there. Let me tell you."
Yeah, and then they send rockets after him.
Yeah, they start shooting rocket launchers.
It's great.
It's awesome.
Well, these are the kinds of
That's so
this is the kind of story
comic-y.
you can't tell with a seasoned Batman.
Mhm.
Like he'd never do that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. No, that was all really fun.
So yeah, I really appreciated that. I liked this. This was an angle that was real fresh at the time, and I don't know that anybody's really talking about this much since I'd forgotten all about this part. But the idea that Batman, I kind of like resents other adults that were in Bruce Wayne's life at the time for not saving his parents.
Mhm. Yeah, where it's not even necessarily a conscious thing, but like that's part of why he pushes people away.
Yeah, and Alfred says he's actively punishing those Alfred and others
Mhm.
for not saving him, for not being there.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I really like that a lot. And
I love
like,
that as part of his arc. That he's got,
that's what I was about to say. Yeah, so I like that his arc is overall to start trusting people.
and that rings true. That feels like he actually gets to a place by the end of that, and I buy that overall Batman would still not be the most trusting person, and it would be hard for him to get close to people, while at the same time, he doesn't have that as much with specifically these people. Specifically,
Yeah, he's got like his core group.
That group that was kind of always there for him, but just couldn't have known that his parents were going to get killed. Like that's unreasonable. It's irrational, and you can see how a child would get there.
Mhm. Yeah, it made me think of in I Am Gotham. There's a part. It's like an MCU joke where uh, Dick asks Bruce if he trusts him, and Bruce goes, "No, I don't even trust Alfred." And Alfred's like, "Yeah, when he was 10, I didn't buy him an axe that he wanted, so he's never trusted me since." And I thought about that moment because like that always felt super out of character to me, just to have a joke.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I really appreciated that arc in this. I also really love when he's going off to fight the Riddler and he thinks that they're all gonna die. When you get the narration of him recording like a goodbye to Alfred,
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
that part's awesome. That reminded me of the JMS Spider-Man first arc where Peter stops the fight to call Aunt May to say goodbye. I don't know if you remember that, but that's also
Yeah.
a great scene.
Well, and it didn't occur to me until we were having this conversation that his allies, by the end of this, that he ultimately trusts, are all adults that were there when he was a kid. Like
Mhm.
they're
Yeah.
they're all kind of mentor characters. Like even Lucius Fox, who I don't know if he actually knew him when he was a kid, but like he was working for Wayne Enterprises. We're told that, and he
Yeah, and Bruce
was.
says that his dad said that Lucius Fox was like the smartest person that works at the company or something like that. So like there's a connection to him through that.
Now I do have to say real quick, the image that most resonates with me in the whole book is this one with the broken Riddler cane.
Just that cover.
Yeah, that really resonates with me because that time that I broke my Riddler cane
My favorite cover is
on camera. Do you remember that?
Yeah, in the Doctor Strange Marvel Mania.
Yeah, I broke my Riddler cane, and then I had an emotional flashback when I saw this cover.
And you were sitting next to Eric, who had his Lion Man of hair.
Oh yeah, that's true. We were unintentionally recreating this cover. If only I'd been wearing purple gloves.
Yeah, and fully going like with it.
John Ty put in a $2 super chat earlier and says, "Thanks for that. The colors in this book are very bright, vibrant. Yeah, and I like that in stark contrast to what we had been getting from this book before. Like Austin said, I think it kind of jumped out to people that so much of this is in the daytime, and
Yeah, or even just compared to year one, where that's like a very dark and, for lack of a better word, like realistic look.
yeah, and yet we go to super dark places in it.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. No, like I said at the beginning of the show, the colors in this remind me a lot of the original colors of Killing Joke and Places. Just how bright certain colors are.
Well, do you have any kind of like thematic read into why it looks the way it does? Like how much of it is to kind of harken back to Golden Age?
I assume it's that, but I don't entirely know.
I think
I
that's
don't know if
gotta
there's like a thematic reading to it.
that's gotta be at least a piece of it.
Hmm. Yeah, and I don't think like Golden Age Batman is being super colorful, but like I think of that as more of a Silver Age thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That could have just been something they were trying to go back to either way.
Well, and then I wonder if the idea is Gotham is an awful place the way Bruce describes it. But if you look back on it, you might have rose-tinted glasses where it was a simpler time. Like maybe you have that escalation thing always with Batman. You're already getting it here where everything. I really like that all the villains are connected to Bruce Wayne, but Batman is still doing things that is escalating plots to some degree. And so I wonder if maybe part of the idea in the look of it and how bright it is as dark and terrible as Gotham is, it gets worse when Batman gets started.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is
possible.
You don't even have Arkham inmates yet. Riddler is the first one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, there's going to be so many worse things, and possibly another event like this if No Man's Land still counts.
Yeah.
Who knows if it does?
Yeah, there's no telling. I'm pretty sure it doesn't though. I'm pretty sure that did not happen in New 52 continuity.
I don't know what's going on.
I don't see how, because of so many reinventions of characters. I mean, like Cassandra Cain was a totally different thing, and like I don't see how New 52 could have happened, but
mm-hmm. I don't know. Questions to ask Jim Lee when you go to heaven.
We're at about an hour and a half. What other aspects of this do you want to hit?
I'm trying to think, because a lot of it's just like small stuff, like that the bit in Gordon's backstory where he gets ripped apart by the dogs is really creepy.
Yeah, it's
it's really messed up.
It's horrible. Yeah, break that down real quick. I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah, so Gordon, you start to think that Gordon is corrupt, and then you realize, like, no, Gordon back then was as idealistic as Bruce Wayne was as a child, where he just got to Gotham, and he thinks, he can be a bright spark in this dark city. And then he...
was that intentional, that you said Dark City?
No. I keep
Good
forgetting
on you,
what the
though.
names of the individual bits of this are, like the three stories. So I forgot that was the name of one.
Yeah, it's Dark City, which is a great film, but this has nothing to do with it.
But so they pick up Bruce Wayne, who skips school, and they're driving around and they're making their rounds. And Gordon's partner is going by and collecting money, basically. And he gets a coat for Gordon, which was, of course, a bribe. But both he and Bruce didn't think that. And then Gordon goes back later on because he starts to question it. And then he sees that in the back of this like tailor shop, there's like a dog fighting ring, which was super crazy. And there's all these cops and criminals like
So
taking bets on
it's
it.
a weird thing for a tailor shop to be a front for.
Yeah. And Gordon says, well, I'm going to release this to the commissioner. And they say, well, he's going to be here in an hour to take bets
He's
anyways.
on it. He does all this.
Yeah. And Gordon says, okay, well, I'll take it to the press. And then they just turn the dogs on him. it,
And
it's
then they're rooting for the dogs.
Yeah, and they're all taking bets on who's going to win. And it's really messed up.
Yeah. And Gordon pulls a gun on that guy, and so the coat ultimately ends up being like Gordon keeps wearing it, and he says that it's to remind these terrible cops that he has not forgotten that, and not to mess with them. But he also says maybe it's like it's like a shame kind of thing. And then when you get to the end of the story, it gets replaced, and I think Bruce buys it, doesn't he?
Yeah, Bruce gets him a new coat to say, like, look, I know that you're not a corrupt cop.
Yeah.
Like, I get what happened.
And then that, to me, from then on, would be a symbol of his, like, remaking the police force in his, like, uncorrupted image.
Yeah,
Like,
it's his,
I came in and...
knight's armor.
Yeah, this started from this super corrupt place, and I've got this new coat, and that's not what it is anymore. And I'm not going to put up with that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
That's...
No, he almost has like a Flash thing from year one, but almost reversed, where Gordon messes him up, and there's like a reminder that not to mess with him after that. But here it's the reverse, where they mess up Gordon.
Yeah, good call.
Assault him in year one, but like you know what I mean.
I guess I just had this with Miller in general because I love year one, but just like Dark Knight Returns, I always forget about stuff that happens in it.
Yeah, and I know it's interesting because somebody earlier was saying that they like this a lot more than year one. So I've never loved year one, and I probably like this better, but at the same time, like it feels blasphemous to say that.
Well, to something you said earlier, I agree with you when you say it's great how far away Snyder got from that. Like I respect that a lot.
Yeah, they're so different. It's hard to compare.
And he's hitting some of the same
book I like more for moments than the overall package.
Yeah. Well, and I also like that year one is a sit down and read in one sitting kind of thing, and this is like an epic.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're just really different things.
Well, and this is much more a Batman story because year one's more of a Gordon story.
Hey, going back to that title for a second, I like that it ends up being double entendre. Maybe it's triple. Maybe there's even a third thing that I'm not noticing since it's in 3 parts. But I've thought of 2 things that 0 year means. What was Riddler's endgame with using the word year though? Like, that seems a little easy, right? It's like the book is called 0 year, so when he takes over the city, he has to call what he's doing 0 year. Like, I get the 0 part of it, but why year? Like, he's like, oh, we're gonna make a calendar! And then, like, every day he tries to get people to give him a riddle that he can't solve, and he claims that if he can't solve it, he'll let everybody go. What would he have done after a year of that? If it kept going? What if it was only 9 months? Like, why is it a year?
I don't know. I guess because it ties back to that I think it's Egyptian, that like calendar thing that like loops around, like the Yellow Brick Road.
Yeah, that's true.
which is a really good setup
That's a
early on.
motif through this whole thing, the riddles of the Sphinx and all of that.
Hmm. No, that's a great setup that like I didn't realize was set up until near the end, where you have like the page layout is that. Um,
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of setup and payoff just in art too,
mhm,
where you can tell how collaborative this is with Capullo
mhm.
and how much he's aesthetically bringing to all of that,
Yeah, and it's interesting because
which they do through the whole run.
yeah, well, it's interesting because they didn't get along together for the longest time.
Yeah.
Um, Capullo talks about that in his Mark Millar interview, where like he went to DC at one point and was like, "Look, it's either him or me. Like one of us has to go."
Isn't that wild?
It's
I I,
crazy.
I guess, and I've never listened to that interview. Did they just like let bygones be bygones or find some common ground because they
I
came
think they just
because
kind of found their rhythm together.
they've come back together twice now.
Hmm. No, and he talks about how like they're really good friends now, but
Okay. Well, that's what I was
uh,
wondering: is if they still didn't get along, but they just or didn't like each other, but they figured out a way to get along, or if they like actually like each other now.
mhm. No, I think I'm gonna guess it's through Court of the Owls that they're having issues together.
Okay, but not like through
Uh,
the entire run.
no, I think they curb it
Because
pretty
they
quickly.
had that book during. Well, I said twice, three times, because they had that book during the beginning of Rebirth that was awful, and I quit after the fourth issue. And then they came back for Metal and Death Metal. And who knows? Maybe they're doing something right now. I'm not keeping up, but
Hmm. Yeah, the way Capullo talks about it
or I
is
assume
that
Death Metal is still Capullo. I didn't read that, but
Scott Snyder sends in his first script, and it's like a 60-page script for a 22-issue comic, and he just found Snyder very like pompous,
yeah.
and like they had that kind of issue together, and he felt that Snyder wasn't really giving him room to breathe. From what I remember, it's been a while since I've listened to that interview,
Well, that
but
also makes sense because think about what he would be used to with with McFarlane.
mhm. Yeah.
Because you know how McFarlane works.
Well, when he talks
Here's two
about
pages. Draw those.
well, and he talks about that with that new Batman Spawn thing, where he says literally he was given two pages, he would draw them, come back to McFarlane, and McFarlane would go, "Okay, good. Here's the next two pages."
He's making it up as he goes along, and you can tell when you read that. So I'm like, I haven't read that book. I know exactly what that book is going to be like to read. Just trust me on that.
Yep.
I spent a lot of time with that material. John Ty, $5 super chat. Thank you. My favorite story arcs within Zero Year are Secret City and Savage City. For me, Dark City is a bit too long.
So which one's the first and which one's the last one out of Secret and Savage?
Savage is the end, and Dark City is the middle.
Okay, I think. I'm trying to think of how I would rank it. I think it would be Dark City first for me, and maybe Savage City, and then Secret City. I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I actually thought that the opening um, story arc kind of read long in the tooth over the middle one. And I do think that there's a little bit of overwriting, just in general. I like there's more dialogue than there needs to be in Snyder in general.
Mhm.
I'm always gonna feel that way. Like every time I read Snyder stuff, I'm like, I don't know, we cut this down a little bit.
Yeah,
Uh,
I didn't have too much of an issue with it here, but I agree that like that can be a thing. And I mean, like I said, he gave a 60-page script for his first issue, so.
well, I had this through his whole run. I had it again reading this. I'm turning pages just waiting for the next story somebody's going to tell that's going to interrupt the narrative. Every 5, 6 pages, maybe it's not quite that often. We stop everything, and Gordon's like, "Here's how I got this coat." You know, like we do it a lot.
Yeah, I think I'm just so into it that I'm not thinking about it. It's almost like a Stephen King thing where like when Stephen King's firing, um, I'm just reading it and enjoying the story, but if he's not, I'm like, okay, Stephen King has a very specific formula where it's like in how he tells stories in like a 3 arc way.
And then you're
Uh,
noticing all the quirks and
and I'm noticing that like nothing's really happening because most Stephen King books are 3 major events and then the rest is just kind of the character stuff between it, and I start to think about the structure more than I am the story. So it's probably something like that where I'm too into the book to really think about that.
Okay, so this is probably like we should have opened the show with this question,
Mhm.
as opposed to an hour and 40 minutes into the show as we're wrapping up. But this will be kind of a fun wrap up question too. Would you? I'm gonna ask you two big things. Would you hand this story to somebody that liked Batman but had not read Batman? Because I could kind of see it.
Yeah, no, I think you definitely could. It was something I thought about while reading it, that you could easily give this to somebody. I don't know if I would, but you could, because I also feel like you appreciate it more knowing things. Like, if I just hand this to somebody, they're not gonna have the same like glee that I do seeing like the Purple Gloves or like Dr. Death come back or Julie Madison.
Or even know what some of the setup is. Like you would know that. Well, maybe you'd pick up that Red Hood is Joker because everybody knows he falls in a vat of acid.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Yeah, but
that's
also
kind of
distracting.
obvious the way he's talking. You know, I mean, he basically says you and I are gonna do this forever. Like,
Yeah, no, you got to read him in a "I'm Red Hood" voice.
well, I did. I definitely had that.
I'm gonna cut my face off and then staple it back on.
What I really want to know is how does that sand taste?
It tastes sandy.
Yeah, I don't know what you want. Like, and,
Yeah,
then
I don't know.
and then the other thing is, would you give this as a, you know, here's an origin for Batman? Would you give this to a person over year one? I guess it depends on how much time they have to read.
So I feel like probably not, because year one is one of those books that I go, okay, you're just getting into comics, like check this out. But I don't
Yeah.
know if this would be.
It would be interesting reading this and year one and Earth one back to back.
Mm. But like I feel like, okay, like let's say like my dad reads Watchmen and he's like, this is really good, I want to read more comics. I'm more likely to say, okay, read year one.
Yeah.
Because it's less comic booky in that way, you know, where it's like I feel like it's easier for somebody that's not into this stuff to get into. And then if they like that and they like other comic book stuff, you can certainly get your way to this.
Yeah, you're right. This would almost appeal to a person that was more of a Dark Knight Returns fan than a year one fan because of the outlandish comic book stuff. I wouldn't have thought of that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I feel like there's two kinds of Miller fans. There's the year one fan and there's the Dark Knight Returns fan. And some people obviously just love Miller in general, but like I like more down to earth kind of Daredevil type street level Miller. And
Well, and that's the
this
thing I
is
have with year one.
weirdly closer to a Dark Knight Returns kind of thing.
Well, that's something I have with year one too, is that I like year one, but I also feel like at this point it's kind of a prototype for the better version of it, which is Man Without Fear.
Yeah. We didn't talk about visual homages and things. I noticed a lot of them. I don't know if you did.
Nothing's coming to my mind off the top of my head, but
I
when
didn't mean to
say
put
it,
you on the spot with it. It was just a big thing that I kept noticing. So there is the classic Dark Knight Returns panel with the lightning bolt.
Oh yeah, of course.
We had that. I'm not gonna go find them all right now, but they're in here. And then
Yeah, I was like, the second you say it, I'm gonna be like, oh yeah.
yeah. And the other big one I noticed was the early, is it, it's not Detective 27, what is it? I forget, but there's an early Batman cover where he's in front of a spotlight with the cape up over his face. We do that.
Oh, well, we also do
That one's in here?
the Detective 27 where he's holding the guy and he's swinging.
Oh yeah, that's in there too.
Yeah. Yeah, so we do what you're saying, and we do the Detective 27 cover.
Oh, I didn't need the reference to Bat Signal the way he did it. that was kind of that movie naming
That's exactly what I was going to say.
contrived shenanigan, right? Where he's like, there's a signal. It's got a bat on it. Oh yeah, it's a bat signal.
Yeah, you know what it reminded me of is the Batcave name drop in Justice League, where Flash is running around and he's like,
Oh no.
this is your cave. It's like a bat cave.
And those references can be subjective, like whether you buy into them actually being natural in the narrative. Like, you and I might not always agree on them. Like, I actually like the Batpole one, for instance. I thought that was fine.
Oh yeah, I didn't mind that. I thought that was fun.
But I can see some people just going, "Oh, we have to reference everything. Why is that there?" Like that one I was fine with.
Mm-hmm. I like. Oh, I can't say I mean, I don't even know which way you can throw this, but I like that we throw in the giant penny, but we also don't have to bring it to a place where it's now in the Batcave.
No, but I like the setup and payoff for it. It bookends it. It's there at the beginning and it comes back at the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. No, I liked that.
Did you notice that?
And which way does it come back at the end?
They use it at the end. They use it as a conductor. They take the giant penny and they put it on top of something, and it's like roped in, and they use it as a conductor for electricity.
Oh, okay. I must have missed that.
Yeah,
they did.
But it's there at the beginning with his uncle, who is running Wayne Enterprises and uses it to make weapons, and we didn't talk about him hardly at all. But he's he was a sad, tragic character. Like that's the kind of character that you set up to be kind of unsympathetic, and then he has a tragic death at the end, and you feel bad about it.
He kind of becomes like an Uncle Ben.
Yeah, kind of. I like that it wasn't really a sacrificial death. It was more of just he made his bed and I was gonna lie in it kind of death.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
That was good, but he was like some other people with the Red Hood gang. He was blackmailed to be in the gang. And then,
well, that's probably the most Joker moment of any of the Red Hood stuff, right? Is when I just called him Joker. When Red Hood 1 is going to shoot Batman, and then Bruce's uncle, who is one of the Red Hoods, shoots Red Hood 1 in like the mask, and it bounces off, and he turns and he's like, Red Hood number whatever, like, I'm going to pretend that you just happened to miss and it hit me. I'm not going to shoot you anyway.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. Joker. Well, yeah, his line was, I forgive you, but I'm going to kill you anyway.
That's what it is. Yeah, he's like, but I do forgive you.
Mystical Green Beanie says, Year One is great, but I've never seen that Batman going off and fighting Darkseid and Starro with the rest of the JLA. Yeah, I agreed.
Yeah, I mean, that's just solo Batman versus Team Batman in general. I think I have that with most solo Batman stuff.
But that really doesn't feel like it's in a universe with aliens and stuff. And that's one of the many reasons I've always wanted, or I've never really bought into that story being in continuity, like any more than I do Killing Joke. Like I always want those things to kind of be their own stories and not have to connect to everything else.
Fair enough. I have such just like a separation of both things, like, because I also feel like that with most crime Batman stories.
Yeah. But also you'll get stories that are just like so stylized and moody in their own really unique way that like I don't need them to affect everything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
But I get both sides of it scene. Because without Killing Joke I don't get Oracle. I mean, like I get both sides of these things. Like
yeah, absolutely. No, and like I said, Year One to me is more a book about moments than the overall package. Like, I will take that book just for the scene, the first Batman scene where he comes down on the balcony, and that whole issue where the cops are coming for him. That is maybe like my favorite scene in all of Batman.
Yeah, well, and like you can't deny how good of a character piece it is for Gordon, and
absolutely.
It's wonderfully cinematic. John Ty puts in another $5 super chat. Do you like how the bat lands on Bruce's father's bust? to get the idea of being Batman?
Well, that's just classic Batman. Like that's in year one, and that's in the original Batman origin.
But that is specifically on like the head of his father like that?
Yeah, because it like breaks through the window and lands on. Maybe it's not always a bust of his father, but it's at least something that land. It's like normally a statue. I don't know. I'm pretty sure that scene's just taken straight out of classic Batman.
Okay, because what I remember was always just the bat like flying in the room. I didn't think it ever landed on anything.
Yeah, no, I think that's what it is. Because in year one, it's that same thing where he's sitting and he's like bleeding out. Here, he's like hallucinating at the same time.
That's true.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a bust of his father every time, but it lands on something, and there's always that, like the bat stares him in the eyes, and he stares back.
Oh, I also meant to say I keep going back to the Joker origin thing, but I think it's layered and interesting. I just thought of more points I wanted to make about that I had filed away in my brain while I was reading this. I like that before he's Batman, Bruce has to stop a plot that is all about engineering fear in everyone in the city. And then he doesn't take on his mantle as a thing to strike fear in the hearts of criminals until after he has dealt with a fear plot. That's a progression I like a lot. And then I had another thing with Joker. It's interesting that Bruce Wayne, because he's not Batman
He's
yet.
dressed up like Batman.
Why is Bruce Wayne dressed up as Batman? Catch up, Max Frack. You're an idiot. Bruce
deserves to be tased in the lips.
We got to wrap up here. Bruce Wayne creates the Joker instead of, and then what is it? Because Batman is in costume by that point, right? Mm-hmm. So it's
like one of his.
I know what my thing was. If anything, Red Hood 1 is to be believed, because there's an unreliable thing with that character because we don't even know who he is. Bruce Wayne created that guy because he says he was inspired by the death of Bruce's parents, and that led him to everything he's doing now and to the whole chaos thing. So Bruce creates Proto Joker, and then Batman creates actual Joker. That's interesting.
Yeah, that is cool. There's also, it's not as like much of his arc, but as it is in the Batman, but they do talk about how Alfred thinks that Batman should be a symbol for hope as opposed to fear.
Yes.
Which Batman reiterates while running.
And then by the end of this, he's had an arc where he's more to that place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Hayden Spring wants to know if this book is better than going to the gym, because he says he's at the gym.
It depends what you do at the gym.
Yeah, I mean, I find those not especially comparable things, you know. Like,
is this better than Leg Day, Cap?
Everything's better than Leg Day. Well, everything's better than Leg Day jokes. Okay, I'm ready to finish up now. No, Austin, was there anything else you wanted to make sure and bring up? Are we good?
I don't. This book's so dense.
It is. There's a ton going on.
I feel like we covered the major beats.
I feel like we at least hit the broad strokes and got some of our favorite details in there.
Yeah, exactly.
But
you asked me this, and
we got 2 hours in.
This.
Yeah.
And you don't have to go into like huge depth.
No, go ahead.
What is your favorite part of this book? Because you asked me that.
I already answered it earlier, man. It's Bat Blimp.
Oh yeah.
How much fun is it that Batman got his own blimp? And I love the color work in that issue so much. I think that's my favorite stuff visually from Capullo. And then as far as the way the narrative goes, and also some of the visual stuff, that last issue is fantastic. Because I didn't even mention this, but I've always been a big Riddler fan, and this kind of scratches all the right issues
Yeah, and their final confrontation's really good.
It's really well written. And it reminded me a lot again of the way uh, the kind of battle of wits plays in Batman the Animated Series. I love that Batman cheats to beat the Riddler. He doesn't get through all 12 riddles. He says Blade as the answer to riddle. He's wrong, but in his way he's right about it. And that he sets the Riddler up to try to kill him. And that it reminds me a lot of in the first Riddler episode in animated series. If you're so smart, why aren't you rich? Where he intentionally answers the riddle incorrect, so he gets the giant hand to come after him.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I like what that.
It's a lot like that.
He cheats, but he outthinks the game.
Yeah.
As opposed to cheating,
he's finally a step ahead of the Riddler, because the Riddler keeps saying "Oh, you're always a step behind," and he finally gets in front of him.
Yeah, and it's an impossible game.
Right. Well, of course it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Because there's more than 12 steps, and he only has 12 steps he's allowed to take.
Oh yeah, good call. And how about that payoff to walking up the head of the Sphinx? Because you remember, like Bruce, that's how he has to leave the first time he meets the Riddler. And then when we get
something you can only do in a comic book.
That's true.
But when live action, we'd all be like, "What is happening?"
but when you get to the end, we bring that back.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah, no, the setup and payoff for this book's really good.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and wrap up here. Thanks, everybody, for watching and listening. Hope you enjoyed the show. I'm glad we finally got a review of this out. This is the only arc, by the way, from that run that I didn't do a discussion video on back closer to when it came out, except for maybe the last one. I don't know if I did a full-on discussion of the Blue Mark. I reviewed these issue to issue as they were coming out, but I had never done a full, overview analysis or anything.
I just remember listening to the ones you did for the Core, Death of the Family, and Endgame.
Yeah, maybe that's all we did.
Well, I'm sure you did more, but those are the ones I remember, and that's around what I was reading. So,
starting this weekend, I'm going on vacation with my wife. I'll be back in a week and a half, couple weeks. So next 2 Wednesdays we won't have any requests, and then when we come back, Michael McAllister has requested that we watch the Hamilton musical on Disney Plus. So that's the next request.
Oh, interesting.
Which I've listened to the soundtrack of back when you couldn't watch it at all, but I've never actually seen it. I haven't had visuals to accompany the music at all. I've seen a couple of shots of people on stage, but it's a really cleverly written musical, and I've always wanted to see it, and I always wanted to. I was always curious when they'd finally make a movie version of it, and I think on Disney Plus it's just. Is that just a recording of the stage, or is that an actual movie version of that?
No, I think it's a recording of the stage.
Okay. Because I think there's supposed to be a movie, but it hasn't come out yet.
Yeah, probably at some point. One, Disney's all about that guy, Lin-Manuel Miranda, 'cause he did the music for, is it Encanto? And he did the additional songs for The New Little Mermaid.
Is that right?
Yeah. He gave me the greatest song I've ever heard, which is the worst song I've ever heard.
Oh, no. Unfortunate. So I'm sure you're really excited about finally having to sit through Hamilton.
I mean, I've heard nothing but great things. The only thing I know about that is I've heard the Weird Al polka of the music.
Yeah.
And my dad years ago showed me the King scene where he's singing about invading.
Yeah, because Hamilton is what, 15, 16?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was huge. It was everywhere. Huge. Everyone was talking about it.
Yeah, and people that I knew that couldn't possibly have gone to Broadway to see it were obsessed with it.
Mm-hmm. No, there was a ton of that where I'm I don't think half of you have even seen this play.
Yeah. But, you listen to music on Spotify and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it's 8 years old now.
Yeah.
which is remarkable.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Anyway, so we're finally gonna watch that. I'm gonna feel cultured. Finally seeing that. So look forward to that, and then we're back to comics after that.
Hell yeah. And then I can make you listen to that Little Mermaid song.
Oh, I don't want to do it. I've stayed as far away from any material. I don't want to know. I'm good. Like,
That's like the only thing I know about that is I just watched that clip, and because I was just waiting for just clips of realistic Sebastian the Crab. That was all I cared about.
I don't want to talk about that. Fleshy DX says he hasn't heard anything about a movie. This was a few years ago that I heard rumblings about a big screen version. So I don't know if anything. I guess nothing came of that.
If Disney doesn't have something in the works.
Yeah,
they're doing Wicked now, so.
Oh, of course they are.
Yeah, they're all about that.
Well, anyway, we're going to go ahead and get going. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you again next time. I was Captain Logan, and this was Austin, the Day Ghost.
I don't have anything to hold, so goodbye, everybody.
Bye, folks.